So we're going to move things on now. Let's bring in Yasser Louati in Paris. He is the spokesman for the Collective Against Islamophobia in France and a human rights activist. And joining us via Skype from York in the United Kingdom is Zahed, a senior program manager at the Institute of Strategic Dialogue. Gentlemen, great to see you there. Thanks very much indeed to talk about this important subject. There is a strong Belgian connection here. Clearly, what do we know, first of all, Zahed, about the communities that these people came from?
Well, the community of Molenbeek is not unlike a number of communities in Europe that have been the focus of a lot of attention after terrorist attacks, such as Bradford in the UK, East London, Saint-Denis in Paris. And I know I've just been speaking with a number of people in the community in Molenbeek about what life is like there, and they're saying it's become very difficult, and they're sort of caught between the criminality and the jihadism that has come out from within their communities, and the backlash that's happening against them. And they're very concerned about that. Right.
So this community is comparable to those other communities around Europe that we see that seem to breed, if you like, these recruits for ISIL.
Well, I mean, they're very, and rightfully so, defensive a little bit about that because, you know, by and large, these communities are although they may be deprived, there's a lot of hardworking people there. We know that the people who are falling into these extremist movements are a very, very small minority of the people there. And they're trying very hard. I just spoke to a woman there whose son joined ISIL and was killed there, and she's very despondent about that. And she's joined a group of other mothers who are in the same situation, and one of their sons was killed in the Paris attacks. So you can see they're caught on both sides. And I wanted to reference a point that Martin made about intelligence being less preventative. This is the part that's missing here. We see the stories of these young people who are caught up in these movements, and we see them coming from often very secular lives to becoming radicalized and participating in these terrorist acts. What happens in the middle, we're not really focusing on. The common thread, of course, is the recruitment that happens from ISIL. And this is the part where preventative action is needed. And this is the part actually where we need civil society. We need voices like those mothers of sons who've gone. Their stories are very powerful, but we're not empowering them to tell them.
Well, we'll talk about preventative action in a little bit. Yasser, if I can come to you. There is no one prescription, is there, for what kind of community enables somebody to think that they should go and join ISIL's ranks? Because, for one, Aboud's background is not of the category that you would think that he would be, you know, he wasn't impoverished, he had a good education and so forth.
I mean, right now, the common traits among all of the suspects, either, you know, during these attacks and the ones carried out in January, even prior to that, is that they all share a criminal background. And unfortunately, the government has been dealing with deep social issues with only security measures and definitely falling into the trap of these jihadi recruiters.
So what do you mean by that? Are you suggesting that it's more... Is the fact that they come from a criminal background is why they are encouraged, why they're keen to get involved in actions for ISIL rather than some kind of religious zeal?
Sir, like I will quote to you, like, you know, every single research, you know, that we carried out on the subject, and even anti-terrorism judges, they all say that religion plays no part in these actions. It's the hatred of society and seeking payback for myself of humiliation and to a sense of revenge for failing to integrate into these societies. Look at every single, the Kouachi brothers and the ones being, you know, called suspects right now, they all share the same traits again. And unfortunately, is that we are not dealing with the issue properly.
But Abdul Hamid Aboud, he wasn't marginalized. He had a pretty, you know, privileged upbringing.
Who said that?
Well, I mean, the education that he had, his parents were relatively well off.
Yeah, but was he integrated, or was he part of this country, or the country he attacked? I mean, the problem, right, is that when you keep raising the base on the identity of minorities and constantly questioning their adherence, or that if they are really full-fledged citizens of their countries, and if you keep casting them aside from an early age, developing in them a sense of humiliation. I am not explaining nor justifying anything whatsoever that carried out these attacks, but there is a pattern we keep seeing over and over again. And unless the government takes concrete measures to actually shut down the stream of youngsters joining these groups, unfortunately it may happen again. And I thought so, unfortunately, and I am so sad to have been right. Even after the January attacks, I said the government is failing to address the issue, and I'm afraid this might happen again.
Zahed, is that something you concur with?
I concur a lot with what's been said. I mean, first of all, when we always talk about radicalization, we're always trying to look for the silver bullet. I mean, there's a basket of factors that takes effect on individuals, and we've seen people convert to Islam, a radical form of Islam, where their ethnic background is not an issue. We've educated people. The common threads: alienation, as was mentioned, a hatred of society, a desire for meaning, and the people find it in this path. So we have to be careful about how we phrase this. And part of the reason we want to do that is we want to make sure we don't alienate people who could be helping in this battle. And he's right about governments, not really addressing this issue. In many cases, they don't really have the capacity to deal with this preventative work. And that's why what governments need to do is really let civil society lead on the preventative work and really make sure that civil society has the networking and the resources to actually do this more effectively.
Okay, and then what physically, what is the preventative work that you do on the ground? Briefly.
Well, we work with local communities on counter messaging, making sure that they're connected with the private sector, with the social media companies. We make sure that all the pieces of the puzzle in terms of putting up a united front to counter ISIL propaganda, all those pieces fit, and everyone has the resources they need to produce the kind of messaging that pushes back.
Okay, Yasser, in France there is a parliamentarian called Nathalie Goulet, who's a lawmaker who chaired a commission of inquiry into so-called jihadist networks, and she voiced anger at this continued presence in France of foreign fundamentalists, as she put them, Sunni preachers who act as recruiters, beyond what's happening on the ground at grassroots to try and prevent this kind of radicalization. Is that the sort of action that should be taken to stop the spread of kind of incendiary words?
Unfortunately, this is the exact problem we faced in the 90s. Empty rhetoric, empty arguments. We are waging the right war, but we are not waging it to win it. This war against terrorism is being waged to gain public opinion. That's it. We keep repeating the same mistakes as in the 90s. We did not give enough means for the Muslim communities to organize itself, and we keep the inflow of foreign imams to teach in our mosques. And unfortunately, our mosques are not doing their jobs, not out of lack of will from the Muslims themselves, but because they are either controlled by foreign consulates, and I wouldn't nominate them, I'm pretty sure they know who they are, and at the same time we have imams who know nothing about French society. And when Muslims come forward and say, let us manage our affairs, let us educate our youth the proper way, because the French context is very specific. Unfortunately, and I can cite to you an example, for example, in the city of Athis-Mons, in the south of France, I spoke myself to the mayor, and back then there was a project to raise a mosque. And I told the mayor, I was like, Madam, we need to have a mosque funded by the local community and managed by the local community. And she dismissed our argument and said, well, I would rather have the mosque to be managed by the consulate of a foreign country so I can be invited for free over there. This is the kind of corruption we have when it comes to community work. And unfortunately, the ones paying the price is the wider Muslim minority. Add to it the failure of our schools here in France. We have over 160,000 children or youngsters who leave our schooling system without skills or degrees. Add to it the fact that these populations live in confined areas with no proper access to jobs, widespread discrimination in schools, widespread discriminations in employment. So they are cast aside from an early age. Add to it all the laws passed to specifically target the Muslim minority, the law against hijab, the law against the full face veil, these different ministerial circulars targeting hijabi women, they can't go to schools, they can't go to...
Listen, we're going to running out of time.
Children.
I'm sorry, Yasser, we're running out of time. I just wanted to send the last word to Zahed. Apologies for interrupting, but we've just got about a minute to go. Zahed, is anything that you're hearing from Francois Hollande and other world leaders right now, subsequent to the attacks on Friday, do you think is going to ultimately help the source of this problem?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of anger, and I know that politicians have to channel that anger. But I think I've been hearing some good words from President Obama on not overreacting, not excluding refugees based on their religion and so forth. And we need more of that kind of rhetoric right now to make sure that people are practical and reasonable in their response. I agree with a lot with what my colleague has said. We need to make sure that we don't exacerbate the problem. In fact, we make sure we don't do what ISIL wants, which is for our societies to be divided and at war with each other. That's exactly what they want. We shouldn't give it to them.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Zahed, Amanullah, we appreciate that. And Yasser Louati, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting discussion. Thank you. And thank you for watching. As always, you can leave your comments on the program's page of our website, aljazeera.com, and you can post your views on facebook.com/AJ Inside Story, or indeed tweet us at AJ Inside Story. Thanks for watching. From me, Nick Clark, and all the team here, it's goodbye for now.